Part 1. The Judgment Captain. June stood in the center of the massive chamber, his hands bound behind his back. The room was so large that he could barely see the walls. Above him, floating in midair, were the representatives of 47 alien species. They looked down at him like he was some kind of dangerous animal in a cage. He had been a proud officer of the Korean Space Force just 3 days ago. His ship, the Taeguk, was humanity's finest exploration vessel. They had been mapping a new sector when alien ships surrounded them. No warnings, no communication, just weapons pointed at them and a demand to surrender. Now his crew was locked in cells somewhere in this massive station called Nexus Prime. June was alone, facing what the aliens called the Galactic Council. A being made of living crystal spoke first. Its voice echoed through the chamber without needing a mouth. The translation device in June's ear converted the sounds into Korean. Human. You stand accused of representing a species that threatens the peace of this galaxy. June tried to keep his voice steady. We've done nothing wrong. We came in peace. That is precisely the problem, another alien said. This one looked like a floating jellyfish with too many eyes. Your species advances too quickly. You discovered fire 10,000 years ago. You achieved flight barely 150 years ago. Now you travel between stars. This speed of development is unprecedented and dangerous. So you're punishing us for being smart? June couldn't keep the anger from his voice. The crystal being continued as if he hadn't spoken. We have studied your planet extensively since you sent your first radio signals into space. Your history is filled with war. You fight over resources, beliefs, land, and power. In the last century alone, you killed hundreds of millions of your own kind. That's in our past, June said. We've changed. The nations of Earth are united now. United for how long? A creature that looked like a walking tree spoke this time. Your Terran coalition is only 15 years old. Most species take thousands of years to achieve global peace. You did it because you needed to reach space faster. That is not true peace. That is temporary cooperation born from ambition. The crystal being's light pulsed brighter. We have seen species like yours before, human. Species that evolve too fast, that adapt too quickly, that see challenges as puzzles to solve through force and cunning. They become threats to everyone around them. Sometimes they destroy themselves. Sometimes they destroy others first. You're judging us for things we haven't done, June protested. For crimes that exist only in your imagination. No, the jellyfish creature said. We are preventing crimes that will inevitably occur. The Council has voted. Humanity is classified as a Category 5 threat to galactic stability. The chamber filled with alien voices, some supporting the decision, others arguing against it. June caught fragments of the debate through his translator. Some species thought humans should be destroyed immediately. Others suggested careful monitoring. A few argued that humanity deserved a chance to prove itself. The crystal being raised one of its limbs and silence fell. The decision is made. The Sol system will be placed under permanent quarantine. An energy barrier will surround your star system. No human vessel may leave. No vessel from outside may enter. You will be isolated until your species either destroys itself or evolves beyond its current aggressive state. How long? June asked quietly. However long it takes. Centuries. Millennia. Perhaps forever. You're sentencing billions of people to prison for crimes they haven't committed. We are protecting trillions from crimes you inevitably will commit. The crystal being replied. This council session is concluded. You and your crew will be returned to your system. Tell your leaders what has been decided. Tell them why. Perhaps knowing the truth will help humanity choose a better path. The floor beneath June began to move, carrying him toward a door that appeared in the wall. He looked back at the assembled aliens one last time. You're making a mistake. Humanity doesn't respond well to cages. That, the crystal being said, is exactly why the cage is necessary. 3 weeks later, Admiral Hyun sat in the Global Defense Command Center beneath Seoul. The room was crowded with representatives from every major nation on Earth. The atmosphere was thick with tension and barely controlled rage. They've completed the barrier, one of the technicians reported. Our probes can't get through. We've tried everything. Nuclear missiles, kinetic weapons, laser cutting tools. Nothing works. The energy field just absorbs or deflects everything we throw at it. Hyun looked at the display showing Earth's solar system. A thin line marked the barrier, placed just beyond the orbit of Pluto. It didn't look like much on the screen, but it represented a prison that contained the entire human race. "What about communication?" someone asked. "One way only," another technician answered. "We can receive their broadcasts. We can see what's happening in the galaxy, but we can't send anything out. Every signal we transmit is absorbed by the barrier." The president of the Terran Coalition stood up. She was a small woman, but her voice filled the room. "So we can watch the galaxy live its life while we're locked in here. They want us to see what we're missing. They want us to feel small and helpless." "That appears to be the intent," Hayun agreed. "Admiral, what are our options?" Hayun pulled up a different display. "Limited for now. We can survive. The solar system has everything we need. Minerals in the asteroid belt, energy from the sun, space for expansion on Mars, the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. We won't starve. We won't run out of resources, but we'll be alone. Can we break the barrier? Not with current technology. We've analyzed the energy readings. It's at least 500 years ahead of anything we can produce, maybe more." The room fell silent. The weight of their situation pressed down on everyone present. Humanity had reached for the stars and been slapped down. They had been judged, found wanting, and locked away like dangerous children. "There is one thing," Hayun said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "They made a mistake. They left us with our technology, our ships, our research, our capabilities. They assumed we'd either destroy ourselves or slowly become peaceful over centuries. But," the president prompted, "but humans don't work that way. We've never responded well to being told what we can't do. Every barrier we've ever faced, we've eventually overcome. They think they're protecting the galaxy from us. I think they've just given us time to prepare." "Prepare for what?" Hayun's expression was cold and hard. "To prove them right. They declared us a threat. Maybe it's time we became the nightmare they feared." Around the room, expressions began to change. Fear and despair slowly transformed into something else. Determination, anger, purpose. The president nodded slowly. "What do you need?" "Everything. Every resource. Every scientist. Every engineer. Every person who can contribute. We're going to turn this prison into a forge. When we break out of this barrier, and we will break out, the galaxy is going to learn something important about humanity." "What's that?" "That you should never cage a species that spent 10,000 years learning how to fight, survive, and win against impossible odds. They wanted to keep us contained until we evolved into something peaceful and harmless." Hayun smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Instead, they're going to create something much worse. A humanity that's angry, prepared, and absolutely convinced that the only way to be safe in this galaxy is to dominate it." The room erupted in discussion. Plans began forming. Resources were allocated. In secret facilities across Earth, the Moon and Mars, humanity began its greatest project yet. They called it Project Ascendancy. The aliens had declared Earth a threat and tried to lock humanity away from the stars. They were about to learn that some threats only grow more dangerous when cornered. Part 2. The preparation. 20 years had passed since the barrier went up. An entire generation of humans had grown up knowing only a solar system that was their prison. Deho was one of them. He walked through the underground city beneath the surface of the moon, his footsteps echoing in the massive tunnel. Around him, thousands of people moved with purpose. This was New Seoul, one of 12 major cities hidden beneath the lunar surface. The aliens had observation satellites watching Earth constantly, but they couldn't see through solid rock. Deho was an engineer now, specializing in energy systems. His whole life had been leading to this moment. Today, he would see the results of Project Ascendancy for the first time. The elevator took him down another 2 kilometers. When the doors opened, his breath caught in his throat. The cavern before him was enormous, carved out by mining machines over 2 decades, and filling that space was humanity's secret. Ships, dozens of them. Sleek, deadly, and completely invisible to the alien sensors watching the solar system. Impressive, isn't it? Commander Minji appeared beside him. She was young too, only 35, but she commanded the entire weapons development division. We've built 78 capital ships so far. Each one is the size of a small city. 400 cruisers, 3,000 fighters. Deho stared at the nearest capital ship. It didn't look like the old Teguk that Captain June had commanded. That ship had been built for exploration with smooth lines and visible windows. This was built for war. Sharp angles, heavy armor, weapons bristling from every surface. How did we keep this secret? he asked. Minji smiled. The aliens are watching Earth carefully. They're watching Mars. But they think the moon is just mining operations and small research stations. They don't know we've hollowed out half the interior. Every ship is built underground, then moved through tunnels to the far side of the moon where their satellites can't see. And the technology? That's where you come in. She led him to a smaller chamber filled with scientists and engineers. At the center was something that looked like a miniature sun contained in a magnetic field. We've been studying the barrier for 20 years. Every energy reading, every fluctuation, every pattern. We've learned more about advanced physics from that barrier than we could have learned in a century of normal research. An older scientist approached them. His name tag read Dr. Tajun. The barrier was designed to contain chemical rockets and basic fusion drives. The aliens never imagined we could develop gravity manipulation engines. Watch this. He activated a small probe in a test chamber. Instead of thrust pushing it forward, the probe seemed to bend space around itself. It moved smoothly, almost impossibly fast, without any visible means of propulsion. We can't break through the barrier with force, Dr. Tajun explained. But we don't need to. We can slip through it like water through a net. The barrier isn't designed to stop this kind of movement. Daeho felt his heart race. We can escape. Better, Minji said. We can attack. The aliens think they're safe behind their barrier. They think we're trapped and helpless. They have no idea what we've been building. Over the next month, Daeho worked with teams across the solar system. In the shadows of Jupiter's moons, Admiral Hyunwoo commanded massive shipyards that made the lunar facilities look small. The gas giant's radiation and magnetic field made it impossible for alien sensors to see what humanity was building there. We have enough ships to fight a war, Hyunwoo told Daeho during a tour of the Jupiter facilities. But wars aren't won by ships alone. They're won by information, strategy, and understanding your enemy. That was where Officer Yoonji came in. Daeho met her in a facility orbiting Saturn. She was younger than him, barely 25, but she ran the intelligence division with impressive skill. We can't send signals out, Yoonji explained, showing Daeho a wall of screens displaying alien communications. But signals come in constantly. The aliens broadcast everything. News, entertainment, military communications, diplomatic channels. For 20 years we've been listening and learning. What have you learned? That the Galactic Council is falling apart. Yoonji pulled up a star map showing territories of different species. The decision to quarantine us wasn't unanimous. 8 species voted against it. Those species are now marginalized by the others. There's growing resentment. She changed the display to show intercepted communications. The Luminari, the crystal beings who led the vote against us, are losing power. Other species see them as too aggressive. There are trade disputes, territorial conflicts, and political factions forming. The council maintains peace, but it's a fragile peace. They're divided, Daeho realized. Exactly. And they're arrogant. They think we're still trapped and helpless. Their military is spread thin across the galaxy, maintaining their territories and watching for threats from each other. They're not prepared for an attack from inside the barrier. Daeho spent weeks studying the intelligence reports. The galaxy was vast, containing thousands of habitable worlds and millions of stations like Nexus Prime. The Council maintained order through superior technology and the threat of combined military action. But humanity had learned something important. Advanced technology meant nothing if you weren't ready to use it. The aliens had centuries of peace. They'd forgotten how to fight real wars. Their ships had powerful energy weapons, but their tactics were outdated. Their shields could stop energy blasts, but they'd never faced kinetic weapons moving at significant fractions of light speed. Humanity, meanwhile, had spent 20 years preparing for total war. Every person in the solar system contributed. Factories on Earth produced materials. Miners on asteroids gathered rare elements. Scientists pushed physics to its limits. And millions of people trained for combat, knowing they might die when humanity finally broke free. In a secret meeting on Earth, the leaders of humanity gathered. Admiral Haeun was old now, nearly 90, but her mind was still sharp. She sat at the head of a table with representatives from every major division of Project Ascendancy. "We're ready," Admiral Hyunwoo reported. "The fleet is complete. We have enough ships to fight the entire Council military if necessary. Our weapons are tested and proven," Commander Minji added. "We've run simulations against every known alien ship design. We win every scenario. Intelligence suggests the Council suspects nothing, Yunji said. They still think we're decades away from any kind of breakthrough. Everyone looked at Admiral Hayun. She sat quietly for a moment, remembering that day 20 years ago when Captain June had stood before the Council. She remembered the anger, the helplessness, the determination to never feel that way again. Then it's time, she said simply. We were declared a threat to the galaxy. We were locked away to protect the aliens from us. They made one critical mistake. What's that? Someone asked. They left us alive. Hayun stood, and despite her age, her presence filled the room. They should have destroyed us when they had the chance. Instead, they gave us time. Time to prepare. Time to build. Time to get angry. Now we're going to show them what happens when you cage humanity. She looked around the table at faces young and old, at people who had spent their entire adult lives preparing for this moment. We're not breaking out to ask for a place in the galaxy. We're not going to beg for acceptance. We're going to take what's ours by force. The stars belong to the strong, and we're about to prove that humanity is the strongest species this galaxy has ever seen. What if we lose? Someone asked quietly. We won't, Hayun said with absolute certainty. The aliens study war as history. We study it as survival. They have better technology. We have better instincts. They're fighting to maintain order. We're fighting for our future. There's no comparison. The meeting ended with orders sent across the solar system. Crews boarded ships. Weapons were armed. Final preparations were made. Daeho stood on the bridge of a breaker ship, one of 12 vessels designed specifically to tear holes in the barrier. Around him, the crew worked with calm efficiency. They'd trained for this moment for years. All ships report ready, the communications officer said. Daeho looked at the view screen showing the barrier in the distance. For 20 years, that invisible wall had defined the limits of human expansion. In a few hours, it would be nothing but a memory. Send the message, he ordered. All ships, prepare for breakthrough. Let's show the galaxy what humanity has become. Across the solar system, the fleet began to move. Part 3. The Breakthrough. The breaker ship hummed with power as Daeho monitored the systems. Around him, the crew counted down the final seconds. Outside, invisible to the alien sensors, 11 other breaker ships took their positions around the Sol system's barrier. All ships in position, the communications officer reported. Synchronization at 98%. Good enough, Daeho said. His hands moved across the controls, making final adjustments to the gravity manipulation engine. 20 years of preparation came down to this moment. All ships activate on my mark. 3, 2, 1 mark. The ship shuddered as the engine reached full power. Space itself seemed to bend around them, responding to forces that the alien barrier wasn't designed to counter. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the barrier began to crack. It started small, just a tiny fracture in the energy field. But the breaker ship pushed harder and the crack spread like lightning across glass. Alarms blared across alien monitoring stations as they detected what was happening. But they were too late. The barrier shattered. Energy feedback from the breaking barrier traveled back along its network. 3 alien monitoring stations exploded as their systems overloaded. Debris scattered across space in silent destruction. The way was open. Breakthrough successful. Someone shouted on Daeho's bridge. All breaker ships reporting success. The barrier is down. Send the signal, Daeho ordered. Launch the fleet. From hidden positions across the solar system, humanity's war fleet emerged. Capital ships larger than anything the galaxy had seen rose from behind planets and moons. Cruisers formed into battle groups. Fighter wings launched by the thousands. Admiral Hyunwoo watched from the bridge of the flagship, a massive vessel named Soul's Pride. Around him, displays showed the fleet organizing into attack formations. 78 capital ships, 400 cruisers, over 3,000 fighters. It was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. All ships report ready, his second officer said. Broadcast the message, Hyunwoo ordered, on all alien frequencies. His face appeared on screens across the galaxy, broadcast on every channel the aliens used. His expression was cold and hard. For 20 years you declared us too dangerous for your galaxy. You locked us away to protect yourselves. You were correct to fear us. But you made one fatal mistake. You left us alive and gave us time to prepare. Now we are claiming our place among the stars, not as supplicants, not as equals, as conquerors. Any species that opposes us will learn why you should have destroyed us when you had the chance. The transmission ended. Hyunwoo turned to his crew. Target Nexus Prime, the same station where they judged us. Let's return the favor. The fleet moved as one, jumping to faster-than-light speed using the gravity engines humanity had perfected. They covered the distance to Nexus Prime in hours instead of weeks. Captain G1 commanded the Vanguard carrier Soul's Hammer. She was the daughter of the original Captain June, who had faced the Council 20 years ago. Her father was dead now, but she carried his memory and his anger with her. Enemy contacts, her sensor officer reported. 20 ships. Luminary design. They're the quarantine enforcement fleet. They're expecting us to run, G1 said calmly. They think we're escaping prisoners who'll flee at the first sign of resistance. Show them how wrong they are. All fighters, launch. The carrier's bays opened and 300 fighters poured out. They moved with precision, formations perfected through years of simulation training. The luminary ships fired their energy weapons, powerful beams that could slice through old human ship armor like paper. But humanity's new armor wasn't designed to resist energy. It was designed to disperse it. The beams hit the fighters and scattered harmlessly across specially designed surfaces. The aliens had never seen anything like it. Return fire, G1 ordered. The human fighters didn't use energy weapons. They used kinetic projectiles, simple pieces of metal accelerated to incredible speeds. Physics did the rest. When something small hits something else at a significant fraction of light speed, the energy released is devastating. The first luminary ship exploded in a flash of light and debris, then the second. The third tried to raise additional shields, but kinetic weapons didn't care about energy shields. They passed through and struck the hull directly. The battle lasted 8 minutes. 20 luminary ships were destroyed. Not a single human vessel was lost. Report to the Admiral, G1 said, watching the debris field on her screen. Enemy fleet neutralized. Continuing to Nexus Prime. Across the galaxy, aliens watched in horror as humanity's message and the battle footage spread. The species that had been declared too dangerous for the galaxy was breaking free, and their first action was total military dominance. At Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council assembled an emergency session. The crystal being who had judged humanity 20 years ago, now older and dimmer, addressed the Council. The humans are approaching. They demand we evacuate the station. This is outrageous, the jellyfish creature shouted. We cannot yield to threats. We are the Galactic Council. We are also unprepared for war, a more practical species representative said. Our enforcement fleet was destroyed in minutes. What defense does this station have? The humans won't attack a diplomatic station, another representative insisted. They may be aggressive, but they're not barbarians. This is a bluff. Commander Minji heard those words on her ship's communication system as they approached Nexus Prime. She smiled coldly. They still don't understand us. They think we'll play by their rules. Send them a countdown. 1 hour to evacuate. The hour passed. Most of the aliens fled, but the Council leadership remained. Convinced that humanity wouldn't dare attack the symbol of galactic government, they were wrong. Fire, Minji ordered. Kinetic projectiles launched from a dozen ships, each traveling at 30% of light speed. They didn't need to be large. At that velocity, even a small piece of metal carried more energy than a nuclear weapon. Nexus Prime didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist. One moment, a massive station hung in space. The next, there was only an expanding cloud of debris. The Council leadership died without even time to realize their mistake. On Earth, billions of people watched the broadcasts. The mood was complicated. Pride mixed with horror. Satisfaction mixed with fear. They had spent 20 years preparing for this. But seeing the reality of what they'd built was different from imagining it. Officer Yunji watched the same footage from her intelligence station orbiting Saturn. She was tracking reaction across the galaxy as the news spread. Panic on some worlds, rage on others. Fear everywhere, we've crossed a line, her assistant said quietly. We crossed the line the moment we broke through the barrier, Yunji replied. There's no going back now. The galaxy sees us as monsters. Our only choice is to be the strongest monsters in the galaxy. Otherwise, they'll unite against us and we'll face extinction. She wasn't wrong. Already, emergency communications flew between alien governments. Species that had been rivals for centuries discussed alliances. Military fleets that had been scattered across the galaxy began to gather. Humanity had won the first battle. But the war was just beginning. Admiral Hyunwoo understood this better than anyone. He stood on the bridge of Seoul's Pride, looking at a map of the galaxy. Red markers showed human fleet positions. Blue markers showed alien military concentrations. There was a lot more blue than red. They're organizing, his tactical officer reported. Multiple species are mobilizing. We're tracking fleet movements from at least 30 different governments. Expected, Hyunwoo said calmly. We've proven we're the threat they feared. Now they'll try to eliminate us before we grow stronger. How long until they can mount a coordinated response? Best estimate 2 to 3 months. Then we have 2 to 3 months to make such an attack impossible. He turned to his communications officer. Send orders to all fleet groups. We're not waiting for them to come to us. We're taking the war to them. Target every major alien military base within 50 light years. Destroy their shipyards. Cripple their fleets before they can unite against us. Sir, that's a lot of targets. We'll be spread thin. Better than giving them time to coordinate, Hyunwoo replied. Humanity's advantage is speed and violence. We hit hard, we hit fast, and we don't give them time to think. Every day they have to organize is a day they might succeed. We can't allow that. The orders went out. Humanity's fleet split into smaller battle groups, each targeting a different alien military installation. The galaxy had declared Earth a threat and tried to lock humanity away. Now that threat was loose among the stars, and it was far worse than the aliens had imagined. Because humanity wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for dominance. They were fighting to ensure that no species would ever have the power to cage them again. And they were winning. Part 4. The conquest 6 months had passed since humanity broke through the barrier. In that time, the galaxy had learned to fear the species they had once dismissed as primitive. General Sangwoo stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching through the viewscreen as another alien world surrendered. This was the 7th colony of the Luminary Collective to fall in 2 weeks. The crystal beings had once been the most powerful voice in the Galactic Council. Now they were begging for mercy. Their orbital defense platforms are powering down, his tactical officer reported. They're transmitting surrender codes. Accepted, Sangwoo said. Send landing teams to secure major cities. Standard occupation protocol. No unnecessary casualties, but any resistance is to be crushed immediately. He turned to a captured Luminary admiral who stood under guard on his bridge. The alien's crystalline structure had dimmed considerably since its capture, showing signs of stress and fear. Do you understand now? Sangwoo asked. Your council studied our history and declared us too violent for the galaxy. But you never understood what that violence meant. The alien's translated voice was bitter. You are proving us correct. You are monsters. No, Sangwoo corrected. We're survivors. Your species evolved on a single world, developed space travel, and spread peacefully across the stars. You encountered other peaceful species and formed your council. You forgot what competition means. What real war means. He gestured at the viewscreen. Humanity spent 10,000 years fighting each other. Nation against nation. Tribe against tribe. We learned strategy, tactics, and the will to do whatever necessary to survive. You call that being monsters. We call it being prepared. The Luminary Admiral had no response to that. Similar scenes played out across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. The Mantran hierarchy, insectoid beings known for their efficiency and order, lasted exactly 3 hours once humanity reached their homeworld. Their entire orbital defense grid was dismantled by kinetic bombardment before they even understood what was happening. The speed of humanity's conquest shocked everyone. Species that had maintained territories for thousands of years lost them in days or weeks. Aliens who had never known true defeat suddenly faced occupation by a species they had thought safely contained. But not all species surrendered quickly. The Vryn Ascendancy, a militant empire that had once rivaled the old council's power, refused to yield. Their fleet commander Thakmar watched the human advance with growing concern and determination. They're winning because they're fighting scattered, unprepared opponents, Thakmar told his war council. Individual species can't stand against them. But if we unite the resistance, if we combine our fleets, we can stop them. He began reaching out to other species, even former enemies, proposing alliances. The humans were a threat to everyone. Personal conflicts and old rivalries seemed trivial compared to the possibility of human dominance over the entire galaxy. Meanwhile, humanity's occupation of conquered worlds revealed a pattern that confused many observers. The humans were brutal in combat but surprisingly fair in governance. Captain Seoyun governed Luminary Prime. the homeworld of the species that had led the vote to quarantine Earth. Many expected her to be cruel, to take revenge for humanity's imprisonment. Instead, she established an administration that was harsh but just. "You will follow Terran authority," she announced to the population. "Your laws, your customs, your way of life will be respected as long as they don't conflict with our requirements. Planets that cooperate with us will receive protection and resources. Those that resist will face overwhelming force. The choice is yours." She meant it. Humanitarian supplies flowed to Luminary Prime even as the human military maintained strict control. Schools reopened. Trade resumed under new regulations. Life continued, just under new management. When rebels tried to organize an uprising, the response was swift and brutal. Human forces eliminated the resistance within hours, using tactics and technology the aliens couldn't counter. But civilians weren't punished for the rebels' actions. Only those directly involved faced consequences. The message was clear. Humanity could be both savior and destroyer, depending on how you treated them. This approach confused the aliens but proved effective. Some worlds that had been preparing to resist chose surrender instead. They saw that cooperation with humanity was better than destruction. Admiral Deho, who had been promoted after his success with the breaker ships, received troubling intelligence from Officer Yunji one evening. He was overseeing fleet operations in a newly conquered sector when her encrypted message arrived. "We have a problem," Yunji's recorded voice said. "The resistance is organizing. Fleet Commander Thakmar of the Vryn has been making alliances. We're tracking communications between at least a dozen species. They're planning something big." Deho studied the data she'd sent. The resistance was massing near the galactic core, in a region called the Kalan Nebula. The nebula's dense gas clouds made sensors unreliable, perfect for hiding a large fleet. "How many ships?" he asked in his return message. Yunji's response came hours later. "At least 300. Maybe more. It's 3 times larger than our biggest fleet concentration. They've pulled vessels from across the galaxy. Vryn, Mantrin, Luminari, even some species we haven't fought yet. 300 ships. It was a massive force, larger than anything humanity had faced so far. The aliens were finally doing what they should have done from the beginning, working together. Deho forwarded the intelligence to Admiral Hyunwoo, who was still commanding the overall war effort from Seoul's Pride. The response came quickly. "We can't let them choose the time and place of battle," Hyunwoo's message said. "If they grow any stronger, they might actually threaten us. We'll meet them in the Kalan Nebula. Winner takes the galaxy. Gather the fleet." Deho began pulling human ships from across the conquered territories. It took 3 weeks to assemble a force large enough to face the alien alliance. By the time they were ready, humanity had gathered 130 ships, including every capital vessel that could reach the nebula in time. They were still outnumbered more than 2 to 1. On Earth, Admiral Hyun lay in a hospital bed, her body finally failing after 92 years. She watched news broadcasts of the gathering fleets, knowing that humanity's fate would be decided in the coming battle. Captain Ji-won visited her that evening. The younger woman had become one of humanity's most successful combat commanders. Her victories legendary among both humans and aliens. "We're outnumbered," Ji-won said quietly, sitting beside the old admiral's bed. "We're always outnumbered," Hyun replied, her voice weak but still sharp. "That's not what matters. What matters is will and preparation. Do our people want to win more than the aliens do? Yes, then we'll win." Hyun closed her eyes for a moment. "I've been thinking about what we've become. We wanted to explore the stars. Instead, we're drowning them in blood. But we'll survive. We always do. That's what makes us human." "Is survival enough?" Ji-won asked. "It has to be," Hyun said, "because the alternative is extinction. The galaxy gave us a choice. Accept their judgment and stay caged, or break free and take our place by force. We chose force. Now we have to live with that choice and all it means." She opened her eyes and looked at Ji-won. "Win this battle. Win the war. Then maybe we can figure out what kind of species we want to be. But first we have to survive." Ji-won left the hospital knowing it would be the last time she saw the old admiral. Hyun had been the heart of the resistance, the voice that turned despair into determination 20 years ago. Now that generation was passing, leaving the war to those who had been born into it. In the Kalan Nebula, 2 massive fleets maneuvered through dense gas clouds that played havoc with sensors. The alien alliance held position, waiting for the humans to arrive. They had superior numbers and fought for survival. Their commanders believed they could win. They were about to learn that numbers alone weren't enough to defeat humanity. Admiral Deho stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the nebula on the view screen. Somewhere in those clouds was an enemy fleet 3 times his size. It should have been terrifying. Instead, he felt calm. Humanity had spent 20 years preparing for moments like this. They'd studied war not as history but as science. They'd built weapons and tactics specifically designed to overcome superior numbers and technology. "All ships report ready," his communications officer said. "Good," Deho replied. "Send the message to all crews. Tell them this is for Earth, for the 20 years we spent in a cage, for every human who died while we were locked away, for the future where humanity never has to fear being imprisoned again." He looked at his officers. "The aliens think they can beat us with numbers. Let's teach them that human determination is worth more than 100 ships. All vessels, attack." The fleet plunged into the nebula, and the battle that would decide the galaxy's future began. Part 5. The New Order. The Kalan Nebula burned with weapons fire. For 3 days, the largest space battle in galactic history raged within the dense gas clouds. The nebula itself became a weapon in humanity's hands. Commander Minji's tactical genius turned the aliens' numerical advantage into a disadvantage. The dense gas made long-range sensors useless, forcing ships to get close before they could see each other. Human vessels, equipped with better short-range detection systems, moved through the nebula like predators hunting blind prey. "Target acquired," her weapons officer reported. "Mantrin heavy cruiser, distance 2,000 kilometers. "Fire," Minji ordered calmly. Kinetic projectiles crossed the distance in seconds. The alien ship's shields flickered as they tried to stop the attack. But shields designed for energy weapons did nothing against solid matter moving at incredible speeds. The cruiser's hull cracked and atmosphere vented into space. Across the nebula, similar engagements played out. The alien alliance had superior numbers, but their ships couldn't coordinate in the dense clouds. Their communications were disrupted. Their sensors were blind. They were reduced to fighting small, isolated battles instead of using their numerical advantage. The humans, meanwhile, fought as they had trained for 20 years. Small unit tactics, quick strikes, hit and run. They'd spent decades studying every weakness in alien technology and doctrine. Now they exploited those weaknesses ruthlessly. On the second day, Admiral Deho led a desperate boarding action against the Vrin flagship. 50 Marines in combat armor launched from his ship and crossed the void between vessels. The Vrin tried to shoot them down, but the Marines' suits were small, fast, and heavily armored. They breached the hull and fought their way inside. The Vrin were shocked by the humans' ferocity in close combat. The aliens had powerful energy weapons, but the humans had trained for this. They moved with coordination that seemed almost telepathic, covering each other, adapting to the alien ship's layout on the fly. Deho personally led the push to the command center. Vrin security forces tried to stop them, but human combat doctrine was simple and brutal. Overwhelming violence applied with precision. Within an hour, Deho stood on the Vrin flagship's bridge, his weapon pointed at Fleet Commander Thakmar. "Surrender," Deho ordered. Thakmar looked at him with something like respect. "You fight like demons. Every report I received said you were unstoppable." "I didn't believe it until now. Do you surrender?" "If I do, will you spare my crew?" "Yes, we don't kill unnecessarily, but we will kill if you resist," Thakmar gave the order. The Vrin flagship stopped fighting. Around the nebula, other alien ships saw their commander's vessel surrender and began to waver. The alliance had been held together by determination and fear of human conquest. Now that determination was cracking. By the end of the third day, the battle was over. The alien alliance lost over 200 ships. Humanity lost 37. It was the largest human casualties of the war so far, but the victory was total. The resistance was broken. Species across the galaxy saw the footage of the battle and understood. Humanity couldn't be stopped by force. On Earth, Admiral Hayun died peacefully in her sleep the day after the battle ended. She never knew the outcome, but perhaps she didn't need to. She had always believed humanity would win. Fleet Commander Thakmar was brought to Deho's ship and given quarters rather than a cell. The two sat across from each other in a small room, enemies trying to understand each other. "Why do you fight so well?" Thakmar asked. "Your technology isn't significantly better than ours. Your ships aren't larger. Yet you win every battle. Because we have to, Deho replied simply. Your species fights to maintain power or territory. You can afford to lose battles and try again. Humanity fights for survival. We can't afford to lose even once. That changes everything. What will you do now? Conquer the entire galaxy? I don't know, Deho admitted. That's a decision above my level. But I can tell you what I hope. I hope we find a way to live with you rather than just ruling over you. Thakmar was surprised. You want peace? After all this? We want safety. If peace can give us that, yes, but we'll never let ourselves be caged again. Never let ourselves be vulnerable to someone else's judgment. That's not negotiable. A week later, General Sangwoo arrived at Earth to meet with Thakmar privately. The meeting was arranged by Officer Unji, who had been monitoring communications and believed the Vrin commander was genuinely open to negotiation, rather than just stalling for time. They met in a secure facility beneath Seoul, the same command center where Admiral Hyun had first planned humanity's response to the quarantine 20 years ago. The war is over, Sangwoo told Thakmar bluntly. Your alliance is broken. Species are surrendering faster than we can process them. You can continue fighting and watch your people die, or you can help us build something new. Why would you want our help? Thakmar asked. Because we're smart enough to know we can't rule the galaxy alone. We've won through military force, but long-term occupation of thousands of worlds? That's impossible. We need cooperation. Sangwoo pulled up a display showing the old Galactic Council's territories. Your council was corrupt. They enforced peace through fear and superior technology. They judged species rather than helping them. That's why they're gone. But the galaxy needs some kind of government, some way to prevent chaos. And you want to create that government? We want to ensure it never threatens humanity again, Sangwoo corrected. Beyond that, we're open to ideas. You're a military leader who understands strategy. Tell me, what would it take for the Vrin to work with humanity instead of against us? Thakmar thought carefully before answering. Respect, autonomy, the knowledge that we won't be treated as slaves or inferior beings, and proof that humanity's word means something. That can be arranged. Over the next months, a new galactic government began to form. It was called the Terran Accord, and its structure was different from the old council. Humanity didn't rule directly. That would have required too many resources and created too much resistance. Instead, species maintained autonomy over their internal affairs. But all military forces answered to a central defense command led by humans. Any interspecies conflicts were arbitrated by courts where humanity held absolute veto power. It wasn't democracy. It was closer to empire, but an empire with checks and balances. The message was clear. Humanity would enforce peace and punish aggression, but wouldn't interfere in how species governed themselves. The old council's leaders, those who survived, were put on trial. Not by alien judges, but by mixed tribunals that included both humans and aliens. The charges were specific. Crimes against humanity for the quarantine that killed thousands when Earth's economy collapsed during isolation. Some aliens protested that the trials were just revenge. Others pointed out that for the first time, powerful beings were being held accountable for their decisions. The galaxy watched as justice, imperfect but real, was dispensed. Captain Seoyun continued governing Luminari Prime. Under her administration, the planet recovered faster than anyone expected. Trade routes reopened. Industry restarted. The Luminari learned that human occupation wasn't the nightmare they'd feared. It was strict but fair, harsh but predictable. Engineer Deho left military service to lead reconstruction efforts. He traveled across the galaxy, helping rebuild shipyards, space stations, and infrastructure damaged in the war. Former enemies worked alongside humans to create something new. This is what we should have been doing from the start, he told a Mantran engineer who worked on his team. Building together rather than fighting. But would the old council have let you? The alien asked. They judged you before giving you a chance. Probably not, Deho admitted. Maybe the war was necessary. Maybe humanity had to prove itself through force before anyone would respect us. I don't like it, but I can't deny the results. 20 years after the barrier broke, Grand Admiral Jaiwan stood on a new Nexus station. The old station had been destroyed in humanity's first attack. This new one was built as a symbol, human engineering combined with alien resources, representing the new order. She addressed the Galactic Assembly, a gathering of representatives from every major species. The chamber was designed to echo the old council, but with important differences. No one floated above anyone else. Everyone stood on the same level. Our ancestors were judged as threats, Ji-won said, her voice carrying through the chamber. They proved that judgment correct. They broke free from prison and conquered much of this galaxy through force. They were brutal, efficient, and unstoppable. She paused, letting her words sink in. But they also proved something the old council never understood. Strength without purpose is tyranny. Strength in service of peace is civilization. Humanity fought because we had to survive. Now we've survived. The question is, what do we do with our victory? She gestured at the assembled aliens. We can rule through fear, keeping you under our weapons. Some humans want that. They remember the quarantine, the isolation, the judgment. They want revenge disguised as security. But others, myself included, want something different. We want a galaxy where strength prevents war rather than causing it. Where different species can coexist because aggression is punished immediately and fairly.